In 1994, the PlayStation released and over its lifespan would go on to become one of the most well-known and well-beloved consoles of all time. The era of video game mascots was still riding high, so of course people were racing to develop the defining video game character that would mark the PS1. The Sonic, or Mario, of the PS1 would actually end up being two separate characters. Spyro the Dragon, a fully 3D platformer with semi-open world layouts developed by Insomniac, and Crash Bandicoot, a linear 3D platformer which was significantly harder than Spyro, with unforgiving checkpoints, tight controls, and a motivation to rescue the only woman who will ever love you. Developed by Naughty Dog, Crash went along with Spyro to spawn an original well-beloved trilogy, a bunch of PlayStation 2 spin-offs, and eventually a complete remaster by Toys for Bob. After the PlayStation 1 was dying down and the successor and the best video game console ever made, the PlayStation 2 was looking for mascots again, and this time both Insomniac and Naughty Dog rose to the challenge for a second time, this time being joined by developer Sucker Punch, and the three of them made three PlayStation 2 mascots. Insomniac gave us Ratchet & Clank, a third-person open-world shooter and arguably one of the most successful game franchises of all time. Sucker Punch gave us my personal favorite of the three, Sly Cooper, a linear stealth platformer, and Naughty Dog gave us the subject of today's video, Jak and Daxter, a 3D collectathon platformer. But interesting thing to me is when you bring up Ratchet or Sly, the common response is to get really excited. "Oh, that's my favorite game," is normally said, and a whole autistic level breakdown of how much they love it. But when I bring up Jak and Daxter, the response is normally, "Oh yeah, I loved that as a kid. Haven't played it in years though." So today, let's find out why. Hi, my name is Kaiser, and I do video game reviews, rants, and opinions. And if that's something that you're interested in, then make sure you click that subscribe button down below, as I'm trying to make it to 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And hey, to help me out in the algorithms, why don't you let me know down below what your favorite PlayStation 2 game was? Let's go ahead and jump right into Jak and Daxter. Our story begins with a narration from Samos, the Green Sage. He drones on a bit about this ancient race of people, beings, gods, interpretive dancers. It's never really explained what they are. Called the Precursors. Essentially, all the technology we see throughout the world was invented by the Precursors, and there's a lot of mystery surrounding them. We cut to our main character Jak and his sidekick Daxter, which the game pronounces as Dexter, but it's spelled Daxter, so that's what I'm going to call him. The pair come across Marilyn Manson and his 18-year-old wife he met when she was 14, but she's 18 now, so it's totally cool, guys. And they are talking to these group of monsters called Lurkers. Lurkers are undefined little creatures whose sole purpose is to be the main enemy you fight throughout the game. They serve the purpose pretty well, but we never find out what they are or where they came from. They just seem to sort of exist. Anyway, Marilyn Manson is telling the Lurkers about how it's almost time to enact their great Saturday cartoon villain plan to destroy the world for no conceivable reason. A truly dumb plan, but this is 2001, so I'll let it slide. Jak and Daxter get away from the weird encounter and come across a pool of stuff called Dark Eco. I'll explain Eco in a bit, but for now, you just need to know this is the bad stuff. Daxter picks up a precursor artifact and tosses it over to Jak, where it lights up in Jak's hands. The two get scared by a lurker. Jak tosses the artifact thing at the lurker, it dies, and Daxter falls into the pool of Dark Eco, popping out as a weasel, and the two race to Samos to see what they need to do to change him back. And I want to take this time to talk about the characters in this game. I love the characters in this game. Even Silent Jak has a lot of expressions that help lend to his thoughts without words. Samos is the common old angry grandpa trope, Kira is hot and smart, and Daxter is the right blend of funny and annoying that I find personally endearing. Every time you die from damage, he has a handful of smart-ass remarks he says to you before you die.
Step 1, stay alive. Step 2, think about not doing something like that again! I was right behind you, Jak! Really, I was. Heimlich, stretcher, yuck, Revenant.
He's the person people interact with in cutscenes, and his one-liners are great.
Guy's a rock.
We won't find any more of that dark gooey eco stuff, will we? Cause I'd hate to fall in again and turn into you.
Unmoving? That means our village has no power. The eco beam coming from the jungle temple has been interrupted. And boys, everyone's too frightened to go out and find out what's happened.
Did you pay the bill?
Gobbling up me catch. No matter what I try, I can't seem to catch a single fish in this river.
Woo! Maybe it's your breath.
Or bombardment. So, full of valor, armor shining in the sun. I climbed the hill to take him on, but he pounded me like one tenderizes a yakao steak.
Have you tried attacking him with your melodrama? Because it's killing me.
Gearbox should really take notes the next time they want to make a Borderlands game and they make yet another version of Claptrap that has me wishing for a hidden Easter egg where I get to kill the little insufferable prick over and over again, and see how you make a character who is genuinely funny when they're annoying. In any case, every character in this game, despite the short conversations you have with them, are full of personality and history. The mayor, the sculptor, the redneck, so on and so forth. It really makes traversing the world feel alive and fun, and if you watch either of my Witcher reviews, then you'll know how much I love when NPCs feel alive, and not just set pieces for you to get quests from. I'll talk more about the NPCs as time goes on, but for now, just know that my praises for this game are plenty, and one of the biggest ones are the characters and the world itself. Anyway, Samo says he can't change Daxter back because the transformation was the result of Dark Eco, and therefore only Gull, the sage of Dark Eco, can reverse the transformation. But he lives to the north. Far, far to the north. And the only way there is basically on foot. We can't teleport there because the other sages along the way haven't turned their teleports on for a long time, so on foot it is. One slight little hiccup. The path north is only through the Fire Canyon, which is covered in lava, and you can't just walk over it. That's when Kira comes up and says you can fly over it with your zoomer, but you'll need 20 power cells to power the heat shield, and here's a good time to explain the collectible aspect of this game. So, throughout the game, there are 3 collectibles: Precursor Orbs, Scout Flies, and Power Cells. However, both Precursor Orbs and Scout Flies' only purpose is getting you more power cells. Power cells, for how revered they are the most common thing in the world outside of Precursor Orbs. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry has power cells in their back pocket. Even people living in the backwater swamps or 2 idiots trapped underneath a volcano. Hell, the latter of those 2 has 4 fucking power cells between the 2 of them. For how important this one object is, everybody seems to have one, and yet everyone who wants to give you one wants Precursor Orbs in exchange. The things are literally lying all over the ground. Get off your lazy asses and go get them. Scout Flies are little robot things that belong to Kira. There are 7 in each area, and they are in these red and silver boxes. Smash the boxes to rescue 7 of the Scout Flies, and then you'll get a power cell from them. Now the thing about this is, while it sounds straightforward and empty, collecting power cells are the best part of the game. And it damn well better be, since that's all you do. There is no side questing, there is only power cells. You will live, eat, breathe, cuddle, and masturbate to power cells. And you'd think that collecting them would be generic. Collect currency, collect Scout Flies, reach end of area, get power cells. And that's certainly the case, but there are tons of ways to get power cells. Unique and fun ways, some platforming challenges, some odd jobs, rescue something, and much more. And to illustrate that, throughout this video, I will name every way to get every power cell in each area. Power cells also just feel good to get. Every time you get one, you get a really fun sound effect, and Jack and Daxter do a little dance as the autosave feature saves your progress. It's just overall a really rewarding thing for some of the bullshit you have to get through to get them, and it's really, really fun. With that out of the way, Samos thrusts us into the tutorial on Geyser Rock, and here you will learn literally everything to learn about the game. There's a lot to go through about the game, and I want to kind of space it out, so I won't dump a lot of info on you at once. So let's get my main issue with this game out of the way: the controls, movement, and camera. In a platformer, the most important thing is to make platforming easy to understand, consistent, and engaging to do. You want the player to know all their options immediately, you want them to feel accomplished when they complete your challenges, and you want to have reliable ways to complete them. Jak and Daxter, unfortunately, doesn't do this. Now, I want to make it clear that there is a lot I love about this game, more than I hate, actually. But unfortunately, one of the things I hate is the main gameplay loop. This is a 3D platformer, and the platforming is nightmarish. So what makes it so bad? 4 things: inconsistent momentum, inconsistent inputs, inconsistent camera, and inconsistent ledge detection. Starting off with the momentum, Jak has a very odd way of moving. You know how on consoles the standard is to push slightly to walk, push all the way to run? Well, this standard has been around since the PS1 era, and Jak and Daxter has this but with no in between. Here's what I mean. Because of the way a controller works, when you press on the stick, the characters are supposed to ramp up their speed depending on the position of the stick. So in theory, hardly moving the stick does an odd slow walk in place type movement, and pressing it all the way does a full movement speed. But all that space in between is supposed to end up with a character not moving at their full movement speed for at least a split second, as the stick moves through each of the stages between straight up and down and all the way forward. Jak doesn't work that way. Jak has two speeds, a light jog and zoom. And the zone that gives you the light jog is so small that trying to tap the control stick to micro adjust will often have Jak careening off of platforms and into enemies and off ledges and so on and so forth. Now, once Jak is moving, if you try and course correct, instead of instantly going in the direction you want him to, Jak does this kind of odd heel turn, which will always send him forward ever so slightly before he goes in the opposite direction. This happens whether you are on the ground or in the air, and because of this, course correcting when you've made a jump that maybe goes a little too far will lead to your death. Every single time. Which causes you to try to undershoot jumps, hoping that you will go a little bit further forward, and that will lead to your death. Every single time. However, if you opt to just let go of the control stick, instead of Jak's momentum being carried like it does with course correction, Jak will instead stop dead in his tracks on the ground or in the air. So if you think you've overshot a jump, letting go of the control stick even slightly too early will cause you to just plummet straight down to your death. And if you try to move Jak mid-air to learn on the platform, Jak will continue moving the way he was moving for a split second, causing you to plummet to your death. This becomes such a problem that you'll find yourself missing the simplest jumps and even running right into enemies you should theoretically be able to avoid. As you can imagine, this leads to a lot of deaths and restarts. However, we definitely aren't done. A shorter thing to go over is the inconsistent ledge detection. Basically, Jak, like many competent platformers, has a mechanic where if you reach the edge of a platform but can't quite land on it, you'll grab the ledge, allowing you to pull yourself onto it. There are times in this game where the same exact ledge in the same exact spot will not let you grab onto it. The freshest example in my mind is this spinning box thing in the last area of the game. I got on it the first time and then got my shit rocked, so I had to try again. And the second time, it flung me off. One time, I was able to hang on while it was moving, and then another time, I wasn't. Sometimes, the game won't even register a ledge is grabbable, and you'll instead put Jak in this odd crouching stance and have you just slide off of whatever you're trying to get onto. Next up is the inconsistent inputs. This one doesn't happen as often, but it's still an issue that will pop up occasionally. Basically, Jak has a set of moves to help with platforming, and I guess you can call it combat. I'll cover combat in another section, but for now, the two moves you need to be aware of for this part is Jak can do a standard double jump, a crouch jump that goes slightly higher than a double jump but has less vertical mobility, and a rolling leap that sends you across gaps. The rolling leap will sometimes just straight up not happen. You'll roll and hit the X button to leap forward, and Jak will instead just randomly go into a crouch and just stand there. The crouch leap works fairly consistently, although sometimes you'll find yourself not going as high as you should, but the bane of my existence is the double jump. Here's how it works. When you jump, the height of your jump is dependent on how long you hold down the button. This was the standard at the time, a way to give the players sort of control over their airtime. And it's not a bad system, but much like the movement controls, you have no in-between. You either get a full jump or a mini hop that couldn't avoid a rabid ant crawling towards you. The double jump cannot be performed at the apex of either jump. So most of the time when going for a double jump, Jak simply won't do it because you attempted the input too early. Where this gets frustrating is when you are expected to quickly leap from platform to platform, and you end up just hitting the X button over holding it and trying to get the double jump to correct the mistake, where, you guessed it, you plummet to your death. Sometimes you'll hammer the X button in a desperate attempt to get this stupid jump to work, and this will lead to what I call the triple jump, where you slightly jump, do a small double jump, hit the platform or ground, and then instantly do another small jump and go careening off of whatever you're standing on. Finally, let's talk about the camera, and this is probably, out of everything else, my biggest gripe with the platforming and even the combat in general, because everything else up until this point you can learn. You can fight the inconsistencies and train your muscle memory to make them work, but the camera, oh no, the camera is your worst enemy. Random lockups, moving on its own, moving too fast, not moving fast enough. The game's camera has a mind of its own, and its job is to do whatever is the most inconvenient for you. The biggest issue is moving on its own. You see, for whatever reason, Naughty Dog wanted to give the player a dynamic camera like Resident Evil, where you see the world from one angle at a time, but they also wanted to give you a camera you can control, which is like kind of necessary for platforming. So sometimes, quite randomly, while you are attempting a jump or a leap or to hit a single lurker standing still in front of you, the camera will just move on its fucking own, causing you to switch directions without warning and send you diving directly into a nearby wall, off a cliff, or into the crotch of a lurker, which will then knock you back and hit you off a cliff anyway. I know some people are thinking that maybe I had stick drift with my right analog stick, but no, I tested it on multiple occasions. Whenever you hit certain areas of the game, the camera automatically moves because it detected you in that area. Now, maybe many of you might be thinking these are all just the results of buggy software and a lack of technical advancement of the time, but no. Crash Bandicoot, the original Crash Bandicoot, was way tighter than this. And you know what? I think Naughty Dog knew how bullshit this was, because when you die from falling off a platform, your respawn is instant. The devs specifically programmed the game to respawn you lightning fast to try again, and there's no live system, which is, no pun intended here, lifesaver. If a live system was in this game, I don't know if I would have had the sanity to finish it. I have a theory, one I'll share at the end of the video because there's something to support my theory in the final chapter and the ending cutscenes. But for now, I want you to keep this quick load, no live system in the back of your mind, okay? Okay, so with that out of the way, let's move on. So we move on through the tutorial, and in it we are introduced to Eco. So you know how I spend the last 3 pages bitching about something? Well, now I want to gush about something. I fucking love Eco. I love everything about it. I love how it's integrated into gameplay. I love the sound the game makes when you collect it. I love the different types. I love the lore implications. So I'm going to focus on Eco for a bit. First up, we have Blue Eco. Blue Eco does, well, pretty much everything. You run faster, magnetize objects towards you, break nearby crates, unlock doors, activate platforms, activate these hidden ground things that give you more precursor orbs, activate jump pads. In lore, Blue Eco is the power source for all mechanical devices in the world. It's what runs the machines, the vehicles, keeps the lights on. It's an invaluable resource. Green Eco is your health. Collecting 50 small clusters or 1 big cluster increases your life by 1. And even though you can only hold 3 hits, technically you can have 4 by storing up a bank of 50. In lore, Green Eco is used in medicine. It heals not only people, but also nature. It restores injuries, cleanses disease, and gets rid of impurities within the world. Yellow Eco allows you to shoot fireballs. You hit square to aim a semi-homing bolt towards enemies. These bolts insta-kill any non-boss enemy, even ones who take multiple hits, and it can break boxes as well, even boxes that require explosions. It's also used to take down big structures you couldn't deal with normally. In lore, Yellow Eco is used as the ammunition for firearms and weaponry. It's the source of power for everything from muskets to giant cannons. Finally, there is Red Eco. Red Eco powers up your attacks to allow you to one-hit non-boss enemies, even ones who take multiple hits. It also slightly extends your reach. In lore, Red Eco is a source of raw power. It's often used in tandem with Blue Eco to power heavy machinery and reinforce buildings and objects. But you know what the best part is? All the lore things I explained to you aren't told to us. There's no text dump or book that you pick up. You learn everything by playing the game. Every lore implication of what Eco is there for you to learn by just observing the way you use it in gameplay and observing the way that it works in tandem with the world. I know that Green Eco is used to heal nature because there's a mission where you use Green Eco to get rid of impurities in these darkened plants. I know that Blue Eco is used to power machines because there's a part in the game where you redirect some Blue Eco toward the village to turn on the power to the village. I know that Yellow Eco is used in firearms because the Sage of Yellow Eco has a musket, and Yellow Eco is what's used for a giant cannon later on in the game. And I know that Red Eco is meant to power machines and reinforce things because of the way that the Red Sage's area looks when you're in the game. You learn all of these things through the environment, and that is my favorite way of storytelling and lore accuracy. There's so much other small, minute details that you can notice in the background. If you take the time to enjoy the world, you will learn so much more about it than you can ever imagine. After the tutorial, we enter the starting village, and this is the first main hub of the game. Here's how it works. Each main hub has 3 sub-areas, except one, but we'll get to that later. Each main hub has its own power cells, normally relating to giving the precursor orbs or to doing quests for the local villagers. So for the power cells in this area, we give 90 precursor orbs to our uncle, who apparently is an explorer but can't explore himself a razor to shave that dumbass Bozo the Clown haircut. Go to the jungle and redirect some lasers to turn on some gears for the lazy-ass mayor, as well as give the mayor 90 precursor orbs for his campaign run. We go back to Misty Island and rescue some golden fox lynx-looking thing for the sculptor, knock a bird egg off a cliff on the beach for this bird lady, smack the shit out of some cows for this farmer, give a total of 240 precursor orbs to the owl statue things for 2 power cells. By the way, each main hub has one of these owl statue things, so keep an eye out for that. And of course, find 7 scout flies. From there, we head to the jungle first, because we need to activate a switch to turn on blue eco vents all over the world. So in the jungle, we meet the fishermen and play the most obnoxious fishing minigame on the planet. Open a locked door, follow a river to the sea, make it to the top of this tower, activate the blue eco vent, beat the shit out of this plant thing, and of course, find 7 scout flies. To the beach we go. Here we beat the shit out of this pelican, climb these stairs, scare some birds to cause an avalanche, jump up onto this cannon and kill these lurkers, break some rocks on these green eco harvesters, and of course, find 7 scout flies. Finally, we make our way to Misty Island, and here we're going to cover my second and third gripes with the game, and from here on out, it'll be mostly praise and some speculation. So on Misty Island, we come across our first zoomer section. The zoomer is one of the worst controlled vehicles in video game history. Press X to gas, square to brake, and L or R1 to do a little hop on a flat plane, or leap higher when going off a ramp. The problem with the zoomer is the same problem I mentioned earlier with the inconsistent momentum of the game, except the zoomer always seems to be in a constant state of motion. What I mean by this is, you remember how I was talking about how course correcting of any kind always moves you in the direction you were previously heading for a slight moment before turning? Well, as it turns out, if you are sitting still on the zoomer and you attempt to turn it, the zoomer will move towards where you were previously facing, so the momentum carry is amplified when driving the zoomer. This wouldn't be so bad if the game did not constantly, many times, force you to drive over small ledges and take sharp turns, and ask for way too much precision on your part. You might think, well, Kaiser, this is driving game basics. Just hit the e-brake button to do sharp turns. And that's all well and good, but there is no e-brake button. There's a brake button, but even hitting it will still cause the momentum problem. And if you pass over blue eco while driving, kiss all control goodbye. You will simply go too fucking fast. There are 4 zoomer sections in the game. They all suck and I won't dwell on them, so for now, let's move on. So here on Misty Island, we climb a fort, use the zoomer to jump some ramps, take out some lurkers on balloons, get some blue eco to a platform, and fight off an ambush. Good time to talk about the combat. So earlier I mentioned some of the movement abilities of Jack. As it turns out, Jack has a few combat moves in his arsenal as well. Square button launches you forward with a punch, circle does a Crash Bandicoot spin, which can also be used in the air to let you float temporarily. Crouching plus square gives you an uppercut move you'll never use. Jumping and square will do a ground pound, which is used to smash open scout fly crates. Press some buttons and kill a very specific kind of lurker in the second area, and nothing else. Also, the rolling leap I talked about earlier does damage. So with all these options, you'd think the combat would be varied and interesting, and it's really not. Combat is essentially mashing circle and sometimes square. All the fancy moves you have, you'll basically never use because there's almost no reason to do so. Some enemies require certain moves, but even then you don't have to kill enemies in most cases. I have a feeling combat only exists because that's what video games do. They have combat. Similar to the combat in the Sly Cooper games, it's only really there as an obstacle and not really for core gameplay purposes. Most things die in one hit anyway, which leads me back around to Red Eco. Now earlier, I touched briefly on Red Eco, and while I love its lore implications, in gameplay, it doesn't do much. It's straight up required to kill one enemy type in the game in the third area, but outside of that, it doesn't help as much in combat as Yellow Eco does. I have a feeling the developers maybe wanted some tougher enemies, but could only find time to squeeze in like one or two types. Red Eco has the weakest gameplay element of the four, but it is the one with the most potential. I mentioned earlier that it can extend your attack slightly, and thus you are often given it in situations where you are expected to fight off hordes of enemies like the ambush sections. It helps, but it's also not needed. I just wish they had done more with it. I was thinking that maybe it would have been cool if Red Eco enhanced your other abilities. Like maybe if you ground pounded with it, it would do a shockwave. If you uppercutted with it, maybe it would send you a little bit higher, or it would do like a rising arrow type thing. You know what I mean? Rolling and leaping forward would turn you into a human fireball or something like that. I just wish that Red Eco did more to extend your combat ability so you would both have a reason to use it and have a reason to use your other combat moves. So after Misty Island, it's finally time to head for the first of what I call transition areas. These are mini areas done on your zoomer that will bring you from one main area to the next. This is the Fire Canyon. Hit cooling balloons to make sure your zoomer doesn't overheat, hit lurkers for airtime. The two cells are scout flies and finish the run alive. Next up, we end up in Rock Village, and here we go to the Blue Sage's hut to find it trashed. We activate the portal to bring Samos and Kira through. There's this really funny line about a party.
Hey! It looks like the Blue Sage threw a party.
Oh my! Rock Village is on fire!
One heck of a party.
No, I mean Rock Village is being bombarded with flaming boulders!
And then we find out there's some monster we have to fight, but in order to get to it, we have to repair the Blue Sage's levitation machine, which requires more power cells. Now, this is a good time to note that if you get every single power cell in the first four areas, Main, Beach, Jungle, and Misty Island, the rest of the game will only ever require you to complete maybe one or two areas moving forward, because you get an overabundance of cells very easily. But Mama Kaiser didn't raise no bitch, so we are going to get every power cell in the area. So onwards we go. In Rock Village, we win a race for this gambler in a barrel, give him 90 orbs, save some weasels for the archaeologist and give her 90 orbs, give 90 orbs to this disgraced hero and mock him while we're at it. Mocking him doesn't give us a power cell, he just deserves it. And then give 240 cells to the owl for 2 power cells, and of course, find 7 scout flies. The Precursor Basin is the only sub area in the game that is done entirely on a zoomer, but I've already talked about that piece of shit, so here we catch some flying lurkers, jump a ramp over a lake, cure some plants with a green eco, Superman 64 some pink rings, then Superman 64 some blue rings, and of course, find 7 scout flies. Moving over to the Lost Precursor City, or as I like to call it, the Water Temple, we reach the end to raise a piece out of the ocean, release one from a pipe and grab it before the timer expires, reach the bottom of this place, dash across some electric water, do a quick puzzle with colored platforms that remind me of one puzzle in Spyro 2, slide down a tube, reach the center of the city, and of course, find 7 scout flies. Finally, we get to the Boggy Swamp, and here I get to talk about my most hated aspect of this game. Aiming fireballs. Now I want to make it clear, Yellow Eco is my favorite eco in the game, both gameplay and lore-wise. I love the idea that everything from guns to cannons and more are powered by Yellow Eco. No bullets, just pure energy. I also love the feeling of sending fireballs. Everything from the sound design to the visuals and even the slight homing aspect of them looks and feels cool. However, aiming in this game is and not just any kind of ass, the kind of unwashed ass that belongs to the average Ben Shapiro fan. One that doesn't even get wiped for fear of catching the gay. Do you guys remember way back in the beginning of this video when I talked at length about how Jack only has 2 speeds, slight jog and zoom? Well, that applies to the aiming, even more annoying though. Keep in mind, aim assist didn't exist in these days, and aiming on an analog stick is kind of like attempting to pull honey out of molasses barehanded. It's slow, sticky, and you'll likely punch yourself in the face at some point. First off, inverted is dumb, and it got phased out of gaming for a reason, but mainly, precision aiming is impossible. No matter what you try to do, the reticle will always over or undershoot what you are aiming for. Tapping the joystick sends the reticle flying to to one side of the screen, and lightly pressing it moves it too slow for certain spots in the game. You can't afford to have it move too slow in. I suspect that the slight homing aspect of the fireballs was to make up for the shitty aiming control scheme. In any case, we round out the boggy swamp by riding the bird we rescued earlier across some platforms. Controlling the bird is weird, but at least it isn't the zoomer. Shooting some rats to bring a pig home to the swamp-dwelling redneck who's funny as hell.
Thing that doesn't sink into the mud, that is.
Judging by the smell, I'd wager your bathtub sank in the mud long ago.
What's a bathtub?
Surviving another ambush, breaking 4 rocks to release a balloon, nets us 4 power cells, and of course, find 7 scout flies. Finally, we get the power cells to Kira. She bends over in a way that makes me want to ask my crush to cosplayer, and we move up to fight the dumbest boss in the game. Claw is a straightforward boss on the surface. He shoots some rocks at you have to avoid, then a piece of blue eco shows up, grab that, a bridge is formed with some yellow eco on the other side, run across, grab the yellow eco, spam the fire button until your square button falls off, he throws a boulder at the bridge, you run back to the 3 platforms. The bridge is more broken each time you do this, and after 3 times, Tall, Blue, and Ugly dies. The issue I have with this one, avoiding the rocks is hard as hell due to bad platforming controls already discussed. Sometimes the blue eco just doesn't show up, and if you do not move immediately after shooting Claw, you'll be crushed by the rock. But I digress. We beat Claw's ass and then go to the mountain pass. We have to race some lurkers to the end of the pass, dodging bombs, which... it's the zoomer, I've already explained this. Use a yellow eco vent we will turn on a bit later to get a hidden power cell behind some rocks, and of course, find 7 scout flies. We then enter the volcanic crater where the red sage's house sits. Bring Samos and my future wife, Kira, through the portal, and here we are met face to face with Marilyn Manson and his 2 young wife again. We learn that this is actually Gull and his sister Maya, the sages of Dark Eco. Corrupted by its evilness, they are kidnapping all the sages to open up something called the Silos, which will end the world by covering it in Dark Eco. They warn Samus his time to be kidnapped will come. Daxter freaks out because this means he probably won't get changed back, but never mind that now. Midriff, Kira, needs us to collect more cells to power up our zoomer to survive going down the side of the volcano so we can save the world. Now here, I want you to keep something in mind. This main area, unlike the last 2, only has 2 sub-areas. That'll be important later, I just wanted to point this out. So far, I want you to keep it in mind. Bad platforming controls with insta-respawn timer, lurkers are not really explained that much, and this area only has 2 sub-areas. We're getting closer. So in the volcanic crater, we bring 240 cells to the owl statue for 2 cells, give 360 cells to these 2 doofuses mining out a giant crystal for 4 cells, Google how to find the hidden power cell, and of course, find 7 scout flies. Onto the snowy mountain, by the way, I just want to say fuck ice levels in video games, and in a video game like this, doubly fuck ice levels, because what little control you have over Jack is pretty much gone here. But I feel like I've dwelled too much on bad controls, and I have so much good to talk about, so onto the snow mountain, we find the yellow vent switch, beat up 3 special lurkers with red eco, deactivate these dumb switches, open the frozen crate with yellow eco, open another lurker fort and climb it for 2 cells, beat the shit out of a bunch of children, and of course, collect 7 scout flies. Finally, we go to the spider caves, and here we kill some worms, destroy some crystals, explore a dark cave, climb a robot, show off our gymnastic skills, navigate a spider-infested tunnel, climb some more platforms, and of course, find 7 scout flies. Now, before we move on to the transition area, I want to take some time to just kind of gush about so much I love about this game. This game looks, sounds, and feels amazing. I know this is a PS4 port and I'm playing it on a high-res 120Hz monitor, but it looks so good. The world feels lived in and the environments transition cleanly from one to another. You really believe that this is a real world and not just a collection of environments for you to explore. It really feels like you could traverse this world from one point to another. The music is top tier. Lead composer Josh Mansell reprises his role from the Crash Bandicoot series and absolutely kills it. I even used the Jungle soundtrack for one of my old comedy clip montages when I did DVD content. He's a top tier composer and really invokes the feel of each area with the music. I talked slightly about combat earlier, but let me just say that the way Jak stretches and contorts through his moveset, as well as the sound design around landing hits, taking damage, and more, all make the game feel alive. For all the bitching I've done so far in this review, I want you to know that this is a well-designed game. It's got some gameplay flaws, but its natural world building, beautiful environments, unique character design, killer soundtrack, mind-blowing animations, and fun story give it such a unique charm. Even little details like rope bridges swaying when you walk across them, or the cracking of wood as you're walking across them, the subtle wind that blows when Jak is standing still on a cliffside, all these little minor things all combine together to make the game feel very immersive and very fun. The story as well is very simple, but fun to engage with. There's so much unique charm and character in this game that really makes me want to revisit it again in the future, just to take some time to take in the sights, the sounds, and everything like that. Play it off stream and take my time, you know? Now, the last transition area is called the lava tube, and it's a long transition area, but it's the same concept as the fire canyon from earlier. Hit cooling balloons and stay off the lava, reach the end, and of course find 7 scout flies for the 2 power cells that are here. Now, you would expect us to move to the Yellow Sage's hut, do some contrived power cell hunt, and then go rescue all 4 sages. But we instead end up outside the citadel of Gull and Maya, and there are no sub-areas. Kira comes through the portal to let us know that Gull and Maya showed up while we were going down the lava tube to kidnap Samos, so we need to go in there and actually rescue him. So we go into the area. Like I said, there's no sub-areas. We do some puzzle platforming, and we rescue all 4 sages for our 4 power cells, and of course, find 7 scout flies. I do want to take this time to say that the sages are so interesting, and I wish we could spend more time with them. The yellow sage is a funny redneck, the red sage is a calm and collected engineer, and the blue sage is an ADHD scientist, and they are all unique and fun characters we only get for a few moments. Something I do want to point out here that I'm going to bring up again later for what I've been asking you guys to keep in your back of your mind for this entire game is the yellow sage is a redneck very similar to the redneck that we meet in the boggy swamp. So we rescue all 4 of the sages, scale the citadel to go fight Gull and Maya. This boss fight is, well, I'm gonna be honest, it's uninteresting. You basically use yellow eco to blast 4 different stages of the fight. First, they stand still and we break the eye. Then they use green eco to summon monsters we have to shoot. Then they release some red eco bombs we have to avoid. And finally, they shoot us with a big cannon we have to blow up. In between each stage, we get a blue eco vent that we use to super jump and avoid a giant bomb. This fight isn't terrible, but it's a lot more anticlimactic than you would expect. I expected that we were going to maybe fight a part of the robot, and then as it broke down, we would eventually use all 4 different types of eco to work our way to different areas of the boss fight, and eventually fight Gull and Maya face to face. But that's not what happens. After you do the 4 things that I just mentioned, something shows up called white eco. What is white eco? What does it do? How does it relate to the world? Who fucking knows? We pick up 1 glob of it, a cutscene plays where Jak yells, "Hi-yah!" and the robot blows up with Maya and Gull landing in the silo of dark eco before it closes up. Samos wonders if they are dead, Jak and Kira almost kiss, Daxter interrupted them, and then, because we collected 100 power cells, a door opens up, and we see a white light with the characters commenting on how amazing whatever is back there is, and the game ends. Now, do you guys remember when I said back in the beginning of this video that I had a theory, and I wanted to discuss it toward the end? Here is my theory. Jak and Daxter was rushed. Hear me out. A video game company who previously showed that they were able to make tight platforming controls instead creates a very inconsistent, floaty, and frustrating system, but then they give you an insta respawn timer to make up for this very frustrating system. An area in the game that does not have 3 sub areas like the previous one did. One of the sub-areas in the game being very reminiscent of what should have been a 4th main area in the game that we never get to visit. White eco shows up, but we don't actually get to use it. It's done in a cutscene. And there's a lot of other stuff that's just straight up ignored. Like, we don't really get to talk to the sages or meet them or know who they are. A lot of this game feels like there just wasn't enough time to finish a lot of the ideas that the developers have in mind. Even the boss fight, the final boss fight, is incredibly lackluster that doesn't utilize all the elements that we've used in the game up until this point. And so it makes me wonder if the game was rushed. So I went to Google to try to figure out if the developers have ever talked on this, and I couldn't find anything. I couldn't find anything about it. Most of the responses were talking about Jak 3, which worries me for when I get to that point. But the point is that Jak and Daxter is a game that is incredibly fun, if not a little frustrating, but feels like it's missing something throughout the entire game. So much is just randomly removed, things that should be there, and it all leads me to feeling like this is probably something with the Naughty Dog execs. Remember, this was the era of video game mascots. You wanted to be the first, and you wanted to be one of the best to come to the game so that your game franchise could lift itself up off the ground and survive for years to come. To this day, people my age will buy any Ratchet & Clank game because of the way Ratchet & Clank was done in the early days of the PlayStation 2. So this is something that probably they wanted to get out, but they just didn't have the time to do everything they wanted to do. And if a developer, or you know how to get in contact with a Naughty Dog developer who worked on this game, ever sees this, I would love to know if that was the case. If the game was rushed and you guys had to finish it up really fast, I just need to know, because I feel like that is the biggest missing piece of this game. All in all, even if it was rushed, what we got was a really fun, if not flawed, gem of a game. I think the reason Jak is so forgotten among the three mascots may not lie in this game, but if I were to put my finger on it, I'd say it was the frustrating platforming that made many people gravitate more towards Sly or Ratchet & Clank. But before I get out of here, I do also want to let you guys know that if you missed my full playthrough of the game on stream, then my second channel, The Kaiser Games, linked in the description, does have the entire footage unedited in 4 different parts, so check that out if that's something that interests you. But before we get out of here, I do want to give a special thank you to my channel members as always: Gamer Geek, Damari D. Cordove, Peter RJ, Cinegrim, The Cannibal Main, Spirit Upgrades, and Nuclear Bomb for their additional support. If you want to find out how to become a channel member today, as well as all the perks that go along with it, then make sure you click that link in the description. I love you all so much, and I will see you in the next one.